I got to know your dad through my late mother's elder sister, who was my aunt, who was living at Akiode village.
Okay.
It is now Akiode super town.
Yes.
I think we met before we went to secondary school, which meant that we were friends before we were 14, age of 14.
Wow. He was born in Akiode village.
Yes, he was born in Akiode.
Yes.
And his house is just a stone throw. His house is just a stone throw from the Ajibode house. Mr. Ajibode, you know, the late Mr. Mudashiru, later Matthew Ajibode.
Yes, sir.
They grew up together. We were raised at Udioro in Mushi, which was then at the boundary of what was Lagos colony. What I'm saying now is in the 40s, because none of us went to secondary school until 1955.
Yes, sir.
So, which meant this thing happened before 1955. I got to know that principally because my father, who was working in railway, had farmland which he rented here. And the farms were kola nut and cocoa farms, which had been run when they were very profitable by Egba returnees who owned a lot of land here, the Lambos, all these English sounding names. But by the time these lands were, these farms were no longer, I think, economic, they rented them out to local people. And my father rented some of the farms, about 3. The smallest was just in Akiode. In fact, where this estate, where we are doing interview, was part of the land that they took for this estate. So every time we came, we would come usually weekends when my father was having time. He was still working railway then. He would bring us. We would land at the motor park and then trek all the way down to York to see my own mother's and Baba Biji, that's Mr. Ajibode's grandmother. And we see our grandmother. From there to trek to Akiode here to come and harvest. Not because the cocoa part of the job was not too profitable, very, very small. But what was then economic is the kola nut. So, and this Akiode, I think the trees were younger. So they were fruitful, they were really making money. So we will come here, and the first place, our base will be the Ajibode's house. From the Ajibode's house, I will walk over to your dad's house. That's Shoboale's house. And I will meet Papa. And Papa will be there. Papa and my friend, we are very friendly, we're about the same age. And there was something I noticed. There was no time I got there that people were not working. Your dad, your grandfather, your grandmom, and your late uncle, your namesake.
Yes, sir.
Yes. Yes, sir. We'll go there and then we'll talk. They were in elementary school in Agege here. I knew that my own cousin, that's Mr. Ibode, attended this school called, I think must have been one of the most popular schools and important then, Agege, not Uluwole. Uluwole is the second one. Okay, but the other one, I think, is a council-run elementary school. Okay. I think that is where Mr. Adibode attended. And they will regale me about the story about this. So, of course, among the people in Akiode then, we had some who were of Tapa origin. Okay, those who brought this Igunoko to the village. Okay, sir. Then we had a lot of migrant workers who were from Bende.
Benin Republic?
No, Bende.
Okay, Bende. Okay.
Bende. It's no longer Edo State, yes. But a lot of them from Asaba, from Agbo, they were all there. So it was a mixed kind of population there. So we'll go to your dad's house. But what fascinated me about your dad particularly was that he was very proficient in making this bamboo thing. for roofing. They would have gone very early in the morning to the farm to bring the palm leaves. I mean, the palm leaves, the raw material for making this. And then, you know, coming from Idioro, we had our own different areas of interest, but in particular, this particular craft was new to me and was novel. So I used to go and watch him as he was doing it, and then we talking. From there, we became very close. And as you knew, your dad at that time was of the Muslim faith.
Yes, sir.
But the way we interacted, it didn't, like it happened in many Yoruba communities, it didn't really mean anything to us. But when he got into CMS grammar school, then I got to know more of him, because by that time I wasn't into secondary school.
Okay, sir.
I didn't
and then, sorry, sir, his own primary school was Bishop Oluwole at Agege.
I don't know.
Okay.
You will need to check that, because I knew that Central School is that word I was trying to remember earlier.
Okay, sir.
But I think it must be Oluwole, because I think Oluwole was where the school that our friend Apolabi Kennedy attended.
Okay, sir.
So we go school at Agege. He attended Bishop Oluwole Memorial School. They are not far from each other, but we never knew each other at that time until we got to grammar school in 1955, January 27 or thereabout, to be precise.
So I think it must be, but because Mr. Adibode, I know that for sure that he attended Central School. And my uncles from this George village, I told you,
yes,
most of them attended the Central School, because there were no schools in other villages like Akiode, George, Agidingbe. I don't even think I wouldn't be sure of that. But these schools in Agege, these two schools particularly, were the institutions, the elementary schools that most of the people I knew in this area attended. So we got to know your dad. I got to know your dad very well, because after we've gone to the farm and done a little bit of work, I must confess to you that it was a job I hated very much. Now, the pruning hook, Akoro,
okay, sir.
I hated it tomorrow, because anytime we got here, we will have to take this Akoro, and I know what that meant. It meant climbing kola nut trees. And kola nut trees, you are not the only one going for the kola. There were these reddish ants called salama. Very, very, very bad bites. And then each time we go to the tree, I was almost shaking in my legs. And then each time I came back and I complained, your dad would laugh, because he was used to it. It was, I'm not sure he must be the champion harvester of kola nut. So.
Why? His father farmed kola nuts.
No, they had farm.
They had, yes.
They had farm. But I think in addition to the kola nut,
yes, sir,
they farm the land.
Okay, sir.
Growing things like, but we never did that here. Yes, I think my father allowed some of the villagers to farm on his own land.
Yes.
But our own main preoccupation was to harvest the kola nut in season.
Yes.
There were, like I said, there were some cocoa, something, but my father would harvest it and give it to my cousin's mother, my mother, to dispose of when she wanted, because it was not enough to spend more time on. But the kola was the money spending thing.
Yes.
And this farm in Akiode here, as I said, I think the trees were younger and were more productive, because my father had big ones in where you have this Oba mall.
The new mall?
Yes.
The Sunday market?
The same, no, not the Sunday market, the mall itself.
Okay. Oba, at Caterpillar was so.
Yeah, that's right. That place was a swamp area. My father had a farm just opposite, large farm. And we were, each time we became, sometimes we couldn't harvest the thing over a weekend. We'll have to come the other weekend. But to come to your dad, I learned from him how to endure these bites, how to conquer my fear of climbing trees, these kola nut trees. And so we became friends. Each time after finishing and before going back to home, he would come and join us at the house of Rajibodes. And then we start like children and we start talking about things. So later on, they both entered secondary school before me.
Okay.
Your dad went to CNS Grammar School. Mr. Ajibode went to Ikobose School. Then from there, whenever they had, well, he was a day student. Well, in fact, I think CNS Grammar School then had no boarding house.
Okay, sir.
So he was living somewhere in Lagos, I can't remember now. But sometimes over the weekend or during the holidays, he would come to Dioro and we'll walk all the areas together. It's not as a dangerous area as it is now. It was a very friendly area. We would trek from our house near the cinema, the Roadhouse Cinema.
Okay.
I don't know whether they've changed the name now. It used to be Roadhouse Cinema, very near the police station, the police station at the boundary between Lagos, through Lere local government now,
Okay.
and Mushi local government.
Okay.
So that's where we used to come. We would trek from there to Mushi Market, which is a long. We passed through Akala. I don't know whether you know all these areas.
Yeah.
We go there, and most of our friends then were all living there, because Mushi at that time was a community of aspiring middle class people. Our parents were either working in railway, marine, which became Post Authority,
Okay.
and all the post P&T. So
He was very hardworking. My late friend, Shobowale ANIMASAUN. This behavior now confirmed that the name ANIMASAUN is not just in name, but it's also in deed, because he was ready to give whatever, in fact, when he has at least. It's not somebody who is stingy. I mean,
living at that house at Apapa Road. I was there, I think, once or twice.
He had a room there.
Yeah, room there.
Okay.
And I think another classmate of his was living there. And of course, at that time, everybody started. That's when we started climbing the ladder of life, because you had to have what a stove then, primus. I don't know whether you got to know it. You pump the thing, so you cook your food, you take it back to your room, and so I started living a kind of enhanced life, because once I'm free, and of course when you go to teach, you come back at around 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock. Weekend is free, so we had the weekend to accept. And so it was a cooperative thing, like I said earlier, symbiotic relationship. We were encouraging one another, and hoping that we are going to contribute to a new Nigeria. And of course, there was in the air, this independence thing was in the air, and we were all thinking about it. But when I was about to go to Makerere University in Uganda in 1962, the cohesion within us was so much that they arranged a send-off party. to which a lot of them, even some of them, there are people who I didn't know, some of the people, and then of course they started making friends in the places where they were working. So we had all this, and I got to know a lot of people, a lot of people. Unfortunately, the civil war splintered the kind of union that we had at that time, because a lot of people had to go. Not only the people who went to the east, a lot of people had to change. So for one reason or the other, just a few of us were left. But up to that time, everything was okay. Everything was okay. We were okay. Then, when I came back, they ANIMASAUN, your father,
Yes.
came there, and a few of their classmates had moved to the central bank. So, but before I came back, it's very important to say this. I was at when we were at Makerere, the Nigerians who were there were the first West Africans ever to go and study in that place. So we and you know, in those days, I don't know whether your generation you talked about, people were they were only talking about foreigners, were talking about Ghanaians. Even as big as we were, they would say, "Are you from Ghana?" And we resented that one. So when we got to Makerere, the Nigerians were there. We decided that we were not going to wear anything that resembles Ghana dress. They were not even going to play their high life. We would play Nigerian life. So I will have to write home to your father and some other friends to send me the Nigerian record and all the rest. So everybody was happy in everybody's progress. And we were well, not exactly monolithic, but there was nothing we didn't tell one another. So when I came back from Makerere, when I was job hunting, they were going around with me hunting for job too, and then I got a job in. By that time, I was very happy. They have made progress in central bank, and they met a lot of seniors from my school who were already in central bank. So the group expanded very, very much.
I wanted to ask a question.
Yes,
but
please.
since you wanted to.
No, it's all right.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir, once again. Now, you mentioned like two different occasions
Yes.
where he and other friends asked to or stepped in to ensure that you got a job. The first was at the
After HSC.
yes, and the second was when you returned from Makerere.
Yes.
Yes. And now, from other people's accounts about him, there was a repeated adjective around him, like he was very, very, what's that word?
Generous.
Generous, that's the word. Very generous, very almost on everybody. So I believe that your own account of that will be impressively essential to this work, sir.
Well, it's look, I think it takes a generosity of heart to invest your time in the progress of somebody else. Like what I said, when they went behind my back, so to speak, to talk to the principal of their school to get me. I'm sure he must have been the leader, the arrowhead of that kind of a thing. It must have been generous. I think generosity is not limited to giving out money or anything, giving advice. It's part of generosity. Yes. I don't know of the friends that I had at that time, even up till now, who was not generous. Because if you went to somebody's house and the first thing he does is to bring his primus out, warm his soup, and make you a bath, or buy you bread to eat. Some people are miserly. You could have his money. He could have money.
Yes.
He doesn't have to entertain you.
Entertain.
Well, that's how it started. You will never get to Wale's house and not be entertained. He will entertain you. And I have a personal reason. When I lost my grandmother, who happened to be the grandmother of Mr. Ajibode himself, the first person I told was Wale, Chobo Ali, and it was the first. I think I don't know whether it was possible at that time, but I don't know how he made it. But he probably didn't wait for the close of office in Central Bank before he came to meet me and ask, what are we going to do? And well, I told him that that woman was so dear to me that I was ready to borrow money from anywhere to give her the Tiffin Bella. Although I was not the only grandchild, but I got on so well with the woman and I loved her so much. And then, so he said, okay, we will meet in the evening at Idoro.
Yeah.
So, on that day, then of course, we all started using cars. On that day, as I was about to cross the level crossing at Yaba, near where Fellas used to play. I don't know whether you know that place.
Is that Jibo? Jibo?
No. The level crossing, railway level crossing at Yaba.
Jibo Yaba. No.
Is it Jibo? Okay. Now Jibo. Yes. Okay, it wasn't called Jibo. That place.
Yes.
Yes. As I was about crossing that place to see my mother at Idioro, because one owner run Bolekaja. You know what they call Bolekaja? It's a transport, locally built transport.
Yes.
But what used to happen in those days is that the owner of the transport travels with the driver. It's not a bus board. What do you call it? Conductor. No. Well, in a way, it combines the role of the buser with the conductor's role. I think all is just common sense. So anyway, I don't know whether this is an Ijebu vehicle. The story interesting, that's why I'm telling you. So as we were about to, well, even myself at that time, I had not got a driving license, but I was driving. I didn't display Lana. On that place, he was coming from Ikorodu Road, I was coming from Yaba. And then as we were meeting, the big lorry hit my car. So I don't know what happened. The man became G3, not the driver, the owner.
Yes, that was riding with him.
I don't know what happened. Anyway, he decided to settle with me, even without asking whether I had a driving license or not. And there and then, I collected, I think, is it 11, either 11 or 13,000, because he brought the fender and the car was still new. And then I said, like Yoba would say, Mama Tisindai. So I got that money, 13,000 or 11,000, I can't remember. So by the time I got home in the evening, your father came. And he said, Hakim, wow. Because you didn't have a lot of mortuaries and everything more at that time. So, and we are going to bury her at George Village here. And your father said, okay, you know what is happening? Yoku, so Muda, Koshibai. I will pay for the coffin. And in Yoruba, when you bought a coffin, so I called my sister, my late sister, Yabo, who your dad knows very well. This is what Besimati Sokomara Osi. who sit there, because she was working at a dental school, and she knows what it is. It may not be as expensive as what it's doing now, but it's a lot of money to fund. And so I'm just saying, because you are talking about the other people testimony about his being generous, he was that generous. And of course, we have been together for a long time. But then if he wasn't generous, he would moan with me. He would express sympathy,
Yes.
but not go as far as that. So that's happened. And because of his own personal habit, me and other people benefited from knowing him, because somebody who knows him, if he knows that you're looking for something, maybe in a minute or so, and you just mention his name, and fellow will say, you know, Wale, okay, all right, what do you need? You see, it's a kind of extended, generous arm that you benefit from this interest. So that one happened.
As he was supervisor. In fact, right from that time, it became clear that at least he was somebody on whom there is much premium, or who can be relied upon. And of course, he proved his bosses right by giving him the opportunity to serve at a higher level.
Because I had moved in Lagos, moved to school in Lagos and everything, he got to know a lot of people through me. But when I finished in Badabose School, I was lucky to get admission to Government College Ibadan for HSC. But they had gone straight to work. They had got job in various ministries. I can't remember with exactitude where he worked when he left. But I know, because at that time, life was so good that if you are good enough to survive to Form 5, to take exam, to wait to take school certificate, a job is already assured for you.
Yes, sir.
Whether you pass or you fail. If you fail, the only problem will be you will be paid less than the entry level. So when they finished, they went to work. Your dad, Mr. ANIMASAUN, Mr. Kennedy, Aladi, I keep calling him Aladi, but he doesn't call himself Aladi, Momo.
Yes.
And their friends, they all went to work. But I was still a student because I went to do HSC. So each time I came to Lagos, I was on their scholarship because they were already earning salary. Though you could save money in government college because they paid you very well. So the little pocket money you had, if you were not profligate, you could still have some money. But each time I came to Lagos, they didn't allow me to spend anything. They sponsored my going to films and everything. So we got to know each other. And then, of course, we were becoming adults. We were having eyes to look at ladies. And of course, you knew then you had a lot of things to talk about. This, I think it's about, we can call it the age of puberty. So they went to work, I didn't. But when I finished HSC in 1962 and came to Lagos, himself, Mr. Delesho Dimu, who I think you know very well.
Very well, sir.
Olabi Kende, the three of them conspired to get me a job in their old school, grammar school. Because of the good reputation they have built for themselves in that school, they were on good rapport with the principal of the school then, Mr. Olowu, a geography graduate. So I think they just went to him and told the man that, look, one of our friends had just finished his HSC, and of course, HSC then was ranked with a advanced level.
Yes.
And then that, well, could he get a teaching job here while waiting to go to university? And I was just at home at Idioro one day, and the three of them just came and told me that, and asked me when I wanted to start a job. Can you imagine that? So, well, and that was why, that's how I became a history and Latin teacher at CMS Grammar School at Akoka. Yes, sorry, at Bariga. Now, you can see that even at that early age, they had become men of good character, whose recommendation can be of help to people. So, and it was while I was there, in fact. At that time, I had a brainwave because we have just read Latin. I took Latin in school certificate. And just to show that I had knowledge of Latin, I said, well, we should form an association of friends. And I call it Amici Uginti. That's 20 friends. Even though we are not up to 6 at that time, but we were hoping that others will join us and we will form something. But somehow, the enthusiasm just died as quickly as it came. So, so that showed you the kind of thing we were building then. We were trying to form a successor generation to our parents, whose rise and whose effort to educate us was so called for so much courage and sacrifice. And we encouraged one another because we didn't want to fall by wayside or disappoint people. Fortunately, we didn't. So, then your dad then was living at Apapa Road, I think. The old Apapa Road, this house by this man then. Well, the interesting thing about that house, I think, Mr. Adibode told me that the building contained 40 rooms, face me and face you. So, and each time, as a teacher, for the few months I taught, because I taught there from January till July, when I got scholarship to go to. So, well, sorry, I'm bringing my own. I'm not the subject of our discussion, but I'm just telling you. I'm bringing myself in, just telling you how things were progressing. Okay. Well, you see, like I said, it was a kind of symbiotic relationship. Mm-hmm. I came from a place that was, compared to Akeode, was a city, and Agege then was very rural. So each time I got here, we would talk about life in Idioro. We talk about life in Idioro, how we are going on. Like, for instance, there was no film, for instance, in Agege until they started Ben Cinema, which was years ago. But before then, since the 50s, when this Ghanaian band leader, E.T. Mensah, was visiting in the early 50s, 52, they were playing in this Idioro Roadhouse Cinema that was very close to my house, to our own dad's house. And so each time we got here, then we would discuss all these Indian films we watched there and everything. And I'm sure they must have been envious.
Definitely.
But then here, when I get here, I had a cousin on my dad's side who came from Italy to live with us. He and your father, Shobo Ali, got on very well. You see, it took me a long time to get to the name Shobo Ali.
Okay.
Because before, I think, the Civil War, when he went to Port Harcourt,
Yes.
when he was Central Bank, I called him BC. Even till now, when I'm discussing with Dr. Famariwan and some other people, it's BC.
Yes.
That's what I call him. And I remember that a lot of my friends that I got to know him when he was in grammar school, when they want to tease him, then they used to call him Bisiriyu or Momutiati. Because they said when they go to school, you go and register as young children. So they asked him, your dad, what's your name? And he said, my name is Bisiriyu. And CMS Grammar School, most of the people there would be Christians and enlightened people. So I think they just want to make fun of him. And they said, what's your father's name? So he gave your granddad's name. What's your mother's name? Then he said, Mutiati. I remember the whole thing. He said, so all the people taking registration were laughing at him, looking like a rural boy. But it turned out later on to surprise all of them because he was academically brilliant. And a lot of his, like I said, we had mutual friends. Some of my classmates in Yabamude school ended up at the grammar school. So they became classmates. So apart from learning, getting news of my own classmates in Yabamude school who went to grammar school, some of my friends talked about him too, how he was very good, particularly in chemistry. And so he must have applied the same principle of life that he applied at home here in the domestic area to his learning, because everybody talked about him as being a very serious student. And of course, if you are being funded, this is my rationalization, from that hard labor, youthful hard labor, you are not likely to mess around, to use the common balance. So, from what I heard from all his classmates, Alaji, well, he doesn't really refer to himself as himself as Alaji, Momo, Mr. Kennedy, and our mutual friends, he never disappointed his dad. He faced the education that he went for squarely. And of course, unlike some of us, I would like to confess that when I was in secondary school, I thought some jobs were below me.
You can go on, sir.
Yeah, I thought some jobs were below me, and that because my father, when he retired, he had some farms at Pedro area, and he would want us to go there to go and plant vegetable and everything. Now, I felt very, very insulted. But your dad, each time you come to our 30 here, you seem dressed like a typical rural farmer, and it didn't mean anything to him. So, and you see, when your grandfather called, you could, that is from my own point as a child, even then, you could see a kind of happiness, a kind of pride your grandfather had in it. And when your grandfather now found that some of us who were helping our parents, or of course our dad, well, he didn't know that my own was with some reluctance.
Yes.
He developed the same interest he had in his own son, in me. Because this thing went on so far that when I came back from university years later, and my father died, your grandfather came in old age to attend the 10th year anniversary of my father's death because they became friends through the children.
Yes, sir.
So I think you will recall what we will refer to your dad now at that time. We will call him a kind of role model because there was none of the small children growing up around. I didn't know the whole of Akere.
Okay.
I was only relating to that axis, that's your house, and of course, there were very many people then. I think a lot of people in the village and the surrounding village must have seen him as a kind of model, what we now call maybe influencer. And I think I'm right in this because it is that kind of attitude to life, a kind of positive attitude to life that made people as far as Abuja. You will remember a man, you must have heard of him, called Deyi. He became an electrician and I think he worked with your dad.
Okay.
He's from Abuja. They saw him as a model. And there was another man in who I got to know later in Isheri, who attended Igbobi College and married this Deyi. I've forgotten Deyi's son, but he's late now. His sister married this Mr. Uni, and I think this Uni were migrant from Ilesha area. What I'm saying is that because your father was so thorough and applied himself to job and was good character, there were a lot of people in the surrounding villages who sought his company. And I think later on would be benefited from it. Because I knew at least there was a man at Ogba. There was a man at Ogba here, one Mr. Balogun. I think that street at Ogba, after that, on the way to Shola's Shrine or something, is Balogun Street.
Okay.
Akim Balogun is the man. Years later, when we became the club members in Lagos, he used to tell me that he knew me through your dad. And Ogba then, it was a bit far from actually. You couldn't send small child to go there. Not that it would be kidnapped, but just for safety's sake, because it was all forest.
Yes.
But for at that age, to have somebody who is respected by his mates around, he must be of sterling character. And I'm saying this not because we became friends later. And in their school, I'm sure there are few people who will not know him in that grammar school. Because each time I asked about him, even then, when I came from Bano, I asked about him, you say, that man, Omohu. And Omohu, at that time, meant that this man is likely to take all these 8 papers and pass it. So that was what it was. And we encourage one another. Because if you knew this man was good in this subject, you talk about it more then. They had, I was very good in elementary school with arithmetic. But when we go to secondary school, I was good in arithmetic too. Then I was good in algebra. But there was something esoteric about geometry that I found it difficult. Himself, myself, Chobo Ale, and Mr. Ajibode, my cousin, we really bonded to the extent that when we were doing something at the bureau, he would come and join us here. And each time I came to spend time with the Ajibodes, I spent a lot of time with them. And then, of course, your father was very good. I told you I had a cousin from the father side, from Ekiti, whom my father brought. The man's name was Dada. Now he was a few years older than we are, a shorter man. But man, that man was years ahead of us in courage, in power industry. He got on very well with your dad because, I mean, coming from Ekiti, he was real. What would they call it? Well, if you say somebody's a forest man now, it sounds like an insult. But what I'm saying is that this man can survive in a forest in a week on his own, left on his own. So it was a marvel to me. So he bonded with your dad so well that occasionally, but unfortunately, he had to go back to Ekiti when my father could not sponsor him to secondary school. So I learned, the two of them, they were to me, because each time sometime when we came to the village, in Akelde here, and then the parents were not looking, they would take me out to go and hunt for giant rabbit, okete. And, you know, all these things, growing up at Idioro, I wasn't exposed to this. There were some other risky things we were doing there, but I wasn't. So I learned a lot about life, the life of the typical Yoruba African from them. And like I said earlier, my courage was enhanced. If you were living at Sulere or at Idioro at that time, if you saw a snake, you will run. That will pursue it to kill it. Which it took me time, and I'm sure your dad. But I remember there was a time I told him that my father sent me to go and plug a cluster of a kola nut, big, at a farm near what was then the village that I said it no longer existing, George Village. And when I got there, I saw a black mamba snake on the roof. I left the branch and just jumped to the ground. And I think it was that your brother, your dad, Mr. ANIMASAUN, who told me. I think it was your dad who told me that was a risky thing to do. That a snake will never pursue you. That it will only find a way to escape. And jumping down from the branch could force the snake to fall on me. So you can see how they have understood more about life than we did. So I think we benefited one another. I told them stories about life in city. That's the Idioro city, then close to Lagos. And then, of course, you know, during the festivals, like the Easter, when you have all these things doing exhibit metal, you cannot come all the way from Akelde here or Agege here to that area and come back the same day. Or you want to go to the Babi to see at Easter. So occasionally, I can't remember how many times, but not many, people came from here, I think including your dad, stayed with us. We went to watch all the events. So we shared not a privileged childhood, but a very happy childhood together.
Ìgbà tá gbé láyé, ohun àgbélé ayé ṣe gbogbo.